Okay, Squirrel Hunters, measure one, let's get started. So we're going to start on our open E string with a down bow, and then another one, and then we're going to go over to the A string, A3 to A1 on a two-note down bow slur. So let's play that together. One more time. And then we're going to end up the measure, or finish up the measure, by playing A1 to A3 in two single bow strokes. And we're going to keep those single bowed eighth notes pretty short, generally speaking. So kind of challenge yourself to using as little bow as possible on those. So let's practice that measure together. Measure one. I'll count four. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And that brings us to measure two. So we're going to start measure two on an up bow on the open E string. O to E1, back to open. And then another one of these two-note slurs, we're going to see a lot of these, A3 to A1. So let's work on that phrase together a little bit. So we have E1, E, A3 to 1. Together, I'll count 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now on the last beat of this measure, we have what's going to be a three-note slur. It's going to go over the bar line, over that measure line. So it's going to be on an up bow, on the D string, and the fingering is going to be O, 2, 3. Let's just practice that together. 1, 2, 3, O, 2, 3. One more time. 1, 2, 3. Good. So let's practice everything we've done so far. We have and that brings us to measure three. We're moving right along. Let's skip that note that we slurred into on the first beat of this next measure, measure three. And let's look at the two eighth notes that come after it. So we have A1 on a down bow, A2 on an up, and then an A3 on a down bow. We're just basically walking up a scale here, right? Let's do that together. I'll count 1 and let's do it. 1, 1. And then we're going to repeat the same fingering, but this time we're going to play it the 1, 2, 3 on a single bow, on an up bow slur. Let's do that together. So you're going to want to sort of economize your bow a little bit on these long slurs that we see in this tune. Make sure that you're not using more than, say, like 5 inches of bow, something like that. What you don't want to have happen is for you to wind up down here by the frog, or if you're on doing a down bow, winding up here way up at the tip of the bow where you don't have any room to maneuver. You want to kind of stay in the middle or the upper third of the bow. So let's practice those two 1, 2, 3 phrases. We have the single bow stroke one, 1, 2, 3, and now we have that 1, 2, 3 on a single up bow. And that brings us to measure 4. We're cruising right along. So then after that three-note slur in the fourth measure, we have A1, A2, open A, and then we have 1, 2, 3. So let's just practice that phrase together. We have 1, 2, O, 1, 2, 3. And if you're doing this right, you should be winding up on an up bow. Let's do that again. So let's put all of this together, starting at the very beginning. Okay, let's review everything that we've done so far. So I'll count 4 and let's play it. One, two, three, four. So let's start at measure 5. We're going to play that same phrase that we began the tune with. Open E on a down bow, followed by another open E, and that 2-note slur on a down bow, 3-1. So let's do that a few times together. We have E, E, 3, 1. Again together. And just like we did in the first measure, we're going to end that measure with a 1-3 on the A, starting with an up bow, ending with a down bow. So let's just, I know we've practiced it a few times together, but let's just do it one more time, the whole measure together. And that brings us again to basically a repeat of the second measure. So we're going to start with an open E, 1, open, A3, to 1. And again, it's a 2-note slur on a down bow, just as it was in measure 2. So let's practice that again. So beginning at that measure, E, 1, E, A3, 1. Together. And what do you know? A repeat of measure 2. So we have that O2-3 on the D, 3-note slur, up. Let's practice that a couple times together. And this time, let's add a little bit of emphasis to that last note. And by emphasis, I mean a little bit of bow speed and bow pressure. As if we're tipping into that last note. Let's go ahead. I know I'm moving through this pretty quickly, but this is all stuff we've done before. Let's take the next phrase, which is in the second to last measure of this line. Let's skip the note that we just slurred into and play A1, A2, A3, 2, 1. Again, a very familiar phrase, right? We're going to do this all single bow stroke. 1, 2, 3, 2, 1. Let's practice that again. 1, 2, 3, 2, 1. Now, let's join that up to the 3-note slur that comes before it. So we're going to go O, 2, 3, A, 1, 2, 3, 2, 1. So I'm going to count 3, and let's play that little bit of a phrase. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. And that brings us to the last measure of this line and the last measure of the A section of the tune, or the first half of the tune. Here we have kind of a long slur. We're going to go from open A to A1 and then back to open A, all in one bow. And here you're going to want to budget your bow so you don't run out. So make sure that you're starting farther up the bow, maybe the upper third of the bow, and that you're not using too much. Just kind of be, if that's challenging, just break that phrase down and practice it on its own. And challenge yourself. See how little bow you can use on this phrase. I think you'd be surprised at how little you can use. So in other words, you want to slow down your bow speed. So let's practice this whole line together, this second half of the A section. So that will start with the very first melodic idea that we began this tune with. So let's play that together, maybe a bit slower. I'll count 4 and let's go into it. 1, 2, 3, 4. Budget your bow. Okay, let's review the whole A section now. From the top, I'll count 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. One more time. 1, 2, 3, 4. And that brings us to the B section. So this is the second half, the back half of the tune. So we're going to start again on the open E string. Another open E, this time with the up bow. And now we've got another one of these 2-note slurs, but this time we're going to go E2 to E3. So let's just try that, playing that idea together. So we have E, E2, 3, and make sure that you do that as a 2-note slur on a down. Again, together, 1, 2, 3, 4. And then we're going to finish off that measure with sort of a choppy 8th note phrase, 3, 2. Again, we're going to try to be a little stingy with the bow here. We're going to go E3 to a low 2 on the E. So let's practice that whole measure together. I'll count 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Moving on to the next measure, measure 10, if you're counting along with the sheet music. We're going to start on an up bow here with an open E. And what I would recommend doing here is as you play that open E, put your 3rd finger on the A string and have it ready to go. Because you're going to be tilting the bow over and grabbing that A3 really quickly and then coming back to the open E. So here we have that little maneuver. So let's do this again. Let's play that E, put your 3rd finger down, ready to go, down bow, single bow stroke on the A string, A3, back over to the E string. So let's just play, the next 2 notes in that phrase, which is another of these 2-note slurs on a down bow. We have E1 to low 2 on the E string. So here's the whole phrase. Let's practice that together. I'll count 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 3, 4. 3, 4. And that brings us to the end of this measure. We have, again, this familiar phrase. We're seeing this over and over again. This 0, 2, 3 on the D string, a 3-note slur on an up bow. So let's just play that together once real quick. I'll count 3 and we'll play it together. 1, 2, 3. And since we've seen this phrase so many times, let's just move on ahead to the phrase that follows this. So now we're in measure 11. We've just played into that measure with this 3-note slur, and now we have another one of these 1, 2, 3 phrases on the A string. We're going to play single bow strokes here, starting on a down. And just like we saw above, we're going to follow that up with a 3-note slur up. 1, 2, 3 again. So let's practice that, doing the single bow stroke version and the 3-note slur up bow version of that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. Let's put it all together now. Let's start with that 0, 2, 3 on the D string, that 3-note slur on an up bow that we began the measure with, and play to where we just left off. So we have 1, 2, 3. One, 2, 3. And that brings us already to the last measure of this line. So this is measure 12, if you're following along with the sheet music. Let's skip that 3-note phrase that we, 3-note up bow slur that we started the measure with, and let's look at what comes after it. So on a down bow, we have A1, A2, open A, and now we're just going to basically walk up the scale. 1, 2, 3. And as you can see, we have this 2-note slur happening at the end of the measure. It's marked to be fingered with the third finger for both these notes. So what's going on here? Let's look at that. So here we have on an up bow, A3, and then on the same up bow, we're going to move that third finger to a high third finger position. Let's just break that down on its own and practice it for a second. So we have A3 to high 3, all on the A string. So when we play this faster at performance tempo, what I want you to shoot for is to try to make this sound a little bit less like a slide and more like 2 separate notes. I realize that you're going to be, because the bow is going to be moving throughout this whole shift, this regular third to high third finger shift, it is going to sound a bit slide-like, but try to make that slide happen as fast and as suddenly as you can make it. So like this. So let's pick it up from the last 4 notes of this measure, where we're walking up. So we're starting on an up bow and ending with that third finger shift. That's essentially a slur at the end of the measure. So let's do this starting on an up bow together. 1, 2, 3, high 3. Again together, I'll count 2. 1, 2, up. 1, 2. And again, 1, 2. Now let's back up a little bit and put this phrase in context. So we have that 3-note slur that leads us into this last measure of the line. Remember, it's that So let's play that whole bit together, that whole phrase together. I'm going to count 3 and let's start playing that together, maybe a bit slower. So something like this. 1, 2, 3. Shift up. Let's give that another practice. 1, 2, 3. Now let's review everything we've done so far in the B section. So basically this is the whole third line of the sheet music. So we have So let's play that together. I'm going to count 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So we're at measure 13. We repeat kind of an idea that we've heard before. E, E, to E2, it's a low 2. So we have E, E2. And let's just look at what comes after that. We have a quick little phrase starting on an up bow, individual bow strokes. E3, 4, 3, low 2. Let's just play that phrase together at the second half of this measure, the 3, 4, 3, 2 phrase. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 3, 2. Again, be very short with the bow. And now let's do the whole measure. Measure 13, so this will be 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And that brings us to measure 14. We have on an up bow, open E, over to A3, back to E, and then a 2-note slur on the E string, 1 to low 2. This is basically a repeat of what we saw in measure 10, right? And so in same thing applies here. I would, when you play that open E, I would put the third finger down and have that ready to go as you sort of fly through this phrase once we get to performance tempo. And then let's go ahead and look at that next phrase. This is that same familiar 3-note slur that we saw on the D string, 0, 2, 3. So let's put it all together, everything we've done so far. We started out measure 13, E, E, low 2, 3, 4, 3, 2, over to the open E, A3, back to E, 1, 2 on the E string. And then we have 0, 2, 3 on the D string. So let's play it together. I'll count 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 3, 4. And the end is in sight. Here we have another one of these 0, 2, 3 riffs on the D string. And that leads us into the second to the last measure. We have, following that, A1, 2, 3, single bow strokes, keep them pretty short, and then back down, 2, 1. Basically walking up the scale, walking back down it. Let's just play that little 8th note phrase, that 1, 2, 3, 2, 1. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. Let's play it now with the 3-note slur that leads us into the measure, the 0, 2, 3 on the D. 1, I'm going to count 3, and let's play it. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. And here we are at the end. We have O, 1, O, all in one bow. Again, the challenge here is to be really economical with your bow so you don't wind up way down here at the end of the phrase. So let's just play that last measure together a couple times. I'll count 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 3, 4. I'll count 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. The structure of this tune is AABB, meaning we're going to repeat each section. So let's play the whole tune through for real, as if we're playing it for a paid audience, but slowly, and play it with repeats and do the whole thing. I'll count us in from the very, very top. 1, 2, 3, 4. Repeat. B section. One, 2, 3, 4. Repeat. B section. Okay, now we're going to look at some variations. And if you're looking at the sheet music right now, you're going to see, for instance, under the very first measure of the tune, there's a lowercase a with ... after it. And so what's happening here is, think of each measure that's marked a ... It's like a Lego block. You can take that block and you can put it on any A measure. So basically, these are variations that you can swap out. Click them in place like Lego blocks throughout the tune. So you can swap, say, measure 17 for measure 1 and vice versa. So why do we do this? Well, when we play these tunes for real, like in a jam or if we're playing them with a band, we generally introduce usually kind of small, subtle variations each time we play the tune through. So we might play the whole tune, the whole form of the tune, A, A, B, B, through, say, 3 times. What we want to do is introduce small changes with each repetition of the tune, so it stays interesting, basically. So what I want to encourage you to do is to think in terms of paraphrase. Don't think of a fiddle tune as being a set of very specific, very literal instructions from the beginning to the end of the tune that you repeat in exactly the same way every time. That's kind of foreign to fiddle music, frankly. It's a folk tradition, it's an oral tradition. We learn tunes by ear, and most players will think of a tune as kind of a shape, basically a shape that we sort of follow each time we play it, but we don't, follow this transcription of the tune, the one that you're looking at, for instance, note for note every time we play it. So this is to get you thinking in terms of paraphrasing as you play, reinterpreting what you're playing, and eventually coming up with a version of the tune that's your own. So let's look at measure 17. This is the first variation, and you can see we have the letter A beneath it, which means we can swap out measure 1 or measure 5 for this phrase. This is really, this phrase really sort of typifies what I call melodic paraphrase. We're taking a line, a melody, and changing it just ever so slightly. So it's still recognizable, but it's different notes, really, if you look at it closely. So we have a phrase here, O1 on the E string, back to O, A3, and then we're going to go 1 to open A, and then 1, 3. So basically it's kind of a busier version of this that we played at the beginning of the A section. We can instead use this. And really, if someone is just kind of listening casually to this tune, they might not know that you've actually done this. They might not know it on a conscious level, but they'll probably recognize that something a little different has happened. But it still sounds, it's still shaped, the melody is still shaped like the beginning of Squirrel Hunters. So when you put together your version, then really try swapping out this phrase for the measure marked A in the A section and the measure marked A in the 5th fret. When you put together your version of this tune and kind of make it your own, try swapping out this measure for the one that we started with in measure 1 and measure 5. Moving on, next we have and this brings us to the discussion of 4th finger slides, 4th finger drones. Really common technique that we use in bluegrass and old time music. We can either, so what we're doing here is we're doubling that open E with another E that's played with the 4th finger on the A string. We're going to play that as a double stop. So we could either play that just by going right to the note, which is what's written here. This is the second variation. It's again marked A. It's measure 18 if you're following along in the sheet music. So we have the 4th finger double, another one, and now we're going to do a double stop, which is just 2 notes played at the same time. A1 against open E. And then we're going to finish that phrase up with a 1-3, quick little 1-3 on the A string. Now, one thing we can do with a phrase like this is slide into that first A4. And I'm not sliding into that note from far below it. I'm really putting my third finger in basically a low 4 position, or it kind of corresponds also to a high 3 position. It's like a half step shift, and it doesn't have to be too precise. So if this is the first time you've done this, I would recommend kind of making an exercise of just doing that little half step slide into the unison, into the two E's played together. And again, this phrase is marked A, so you can swap out measures 1 or 5 for this phrase if you get bored playing over and over again, which you probably will. Let's move on to the third variation. This will be the last measure of this line. It looks like there's a whole lot going on here, and this is one of those cases where I think the standard notation makes things look more difficult and more complicated than they really are. What we're doing here, basically, and you can choose to ignore the written version of this. We're going to primarily do this by ear, because I think it'll be easier for you. We're going to slide with our fourth finger into that unison double stop that we had in the last measure, and then we're going to do play what they call a glissando, or a slide from the fourth finger, playing an E on the A string to a D sharp. So it's going to sound really dissonant, and it's going to sound a little sour, but that's sort of how it should be. I think when you hear it in context, I think it sounds kind of cool. This is what some people would call sort of a greasy slide. You hear these in old time music a bit. So I'm sliding. Let's introduce another term here. Sometimes when we slide up to a note, we call that a scoop, and when we slide down from a note, we call that a spill. So let's do this. We'll do scoop, spill. So your fourth finger should be traveling about a half step, and again, it doesn't have to be too incredibly precise. It doesn't have to be right on the D sharp. So I'm going to count 4, and let's practice that a few times. 1, 2, 3, 4. Scoop, spill. Again. 1, 2, 3, 4. Scoop, spill. 1, 2, 3, 4. Scoop, spill. And then we follow that up with a really sort of consonant, really resolved sounding double stop. We're going to be playing A1, it's a B natural, against an open E. So let's practice those 3 notes together. 1, 2, 3, 4. Scoop, spill. So what's happening here is that we're kind of creating some tension and resolving it immediately. We're creating that really dissonant, sort of kind of ugly sounding double stop, but then we're going to follow it up with that nice consonant, nice sort of resolved and restful sounding double stop. We're going to be the hero of our own drama here. And then we follow that up with a A1 to A3. So let's practice that whole phrase together. 1, 2, 3, 4. Scoop, spill. One more time. Let's talk about some other variations that we can add. One really obvious thing that we can add to this tune without changing the melody at all is adding what we call open droning double stops. These are double stops where we play one note open to accompany the note that we're fingering. So in Squirrel Hunters, we can use kind of a rule of thumb for adding double stops, and it'll be drone below. So let me show you what I mean by that. So we're going to be, let me show you what I mean by that. So let's pick the tune up from the end of the second measure. Here we have that 0-2-3 phrase we've seen over and over and over again throughout this tune. What we can do is simply, rather than playing 0-2-3 as a single note melody, we can play, rather than bowing the single string, let's bow the string plane. You'll notice that the bow will just rest easily and without any effort on both the G and the D strings. If you haven't played double stops a lot yet, what I would recommend doing as sort of a preliminary exercise to that is to simply bow some open double stops. And here's the challenge. What you want to do, what you want to train yourself to do when you're playing double stops, which again, it's just any time we play two notes at the same time on this instrument, I want you to focus on playing those double stops without any added bow pressure at all. A lot of people, when they first go from playing single note melodies to double stops, what they'll do is simply press down on the bow until they're hitting two strings, and obviously that doesn't sound very good. You wind up using way too much bow pressure. So what you want to do is tip your bow over slightly so that it's resting easily and without any effort on two strings instead of one. And again, you'll notice the bridge is cut in such a way that you can do this on the G and the D strings, the D and the A strings, and on the A and the E strings. You should be able to play these without bearing down on the bow at all. So that said, let's pick it up again, that 3-note slur at the end of measure 2. We're going to go 0-2-3. So here we are droning the open string below. Drone below. We can do that again in the next measure. We're up on the A string now. Let's drone an open D below that line. This is a really obvious place to add open droning double stops. Good place to start at any rate. So, and again, our rule of thumb, drone below, will get you through this whole passage. So let's practice it together. I'm going to count 3, and let's play it with all double stops, wall to wall. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Another place where we can add double stops in this tune, and in the playthrough of the original sort of playthrough of the tune, you probably heard me doing this quite a bit. If we look at the end of both sections, both the A section and the B section, we have this long slurred line. One thing we can do with this measure to make it a little more interesting is to add a 4th finger slide. A couple different ways we can go about this. One, we can play the whole thing as a double stop. And you see what I did there? I'm sliding again from about a high 3 or low 4 into a regular 4th finger position with my 4th finger. And you notice my finger has got that pretty, it's kind of hockey stick shape. I've got that really, the last joint of my pinky finger is at a pretty radical angle. That's helpful because it gives your finger a little more strength and it keeps your 4th finger out of the way of the string that you're droning against. So what we're going to be doing here is we're going to be sliding into that double A, 4th finger on the D and the open A string, and we're going to hold that 4th finger in place while we quickly grab that B natural, which is going to be a little dissonant, a little weird sounding, and then, but it's quick, and then we're going to come back to the A. So we could play that as a continuous double stop, the whole last measure of both the A section and the B section. You'll notice that the B section has the same identical ending. So this is pretty tricky though. If this is your first time doing fourth finger slides and fourth finger doubling, what I would recommend is what I call the fake fourth finger slide. So just like we did with the other example, we're going to start off with a double stop, sliding our fourth finger from a low 4, high 3 position on the D string, up to an A on the D string, while also droning an open A above it. So we're going to start this slide, but as we get close to that A note with our fourth finger, we're going to pivot over to the open string. You see what's happening there? We're starting with a double stop and ending with a single note. And then we can complete the phrase as we normally would, the last phrase of the A or B section. So let's practice that together. We'll do the fake fourth finger slide. We're going to slide, pivot. Let's just do that for now. We're going to slide and pivot. So now we should be only on the A string with our bow. 1, 2, 3, 4, slide and pivot. 1, 2, 3, 4, slide and pivot.